Minecraft. A game about creativity. Building houses. Mining resources. Punching trees until they obey you. A totally normal sandbox experience. But also, a game where a man can fall from the height of a skyscraper, hit the ground at full speed, take 0 damage if he places a single bucket of water at the last possible millisecond, and then proceed to eat 3 steaks and fully recover from what should legally be classified as a fatal spinal event. So the question becomes, what the actual physics is going on here? We are analyzing it as a controlled physics disaster simulation. And our test subject is one man, Steve. A being who may or may not be violating every law of classical mechanics simultaneously. So we're going to investigate him using AP physics concepts. Kinematics. Gravity. Momentum. Impulse. And by the end, we will determine one thing. Is Steve a human, or a walking physics error? Before we can understand Steve's survival capabilities, we need to understand the environment he lives in. Gravity. Now Minecraft claims to have gravity. Things fall. Objects accelerate downward. Everything behaves, almost normal, which is already suspicious. To test this, we drop Steve from a known height. Let's say 80 blocks. Since one block is approximately 1 meter, that's an 80-meter fall.
What?
And we apply kinematics. Because in physics, falling motion is described by the change in position, or delta y, is equal to 1/2 the gravitational acceleration multiplied by time squared. Steve takes about 2.67 seconds to hit the ground. We get a value of roughly 22.45 meters per second squared, which is more than twice that of Earth's. So Minecraft gravity is basically comparable to that of Jupiter. This should immediately raise a red flag, because if gravity is already insane, then everything else about Steve becomes significantly more illegal. Now we move on to something far more disturbing. At first glance, it seems harmless. A few tools, some blocks, maybe food. But then you realize something horrifying. Steve can carry 36 inventory slots. Each slot holds 64 gold blocks. A single gold block is 1 cubic meter of gold. And real gold has a density of about 19,100 kg per cubic meter. So 1 block equals 64 times 19,300 kilograms. That is over 1.2 million kilograms per slot. Now multiply that by 36 slots. And we arrive at over 44 million kilograms. Which is not strong. That is, small country infrastructure collapse levels of mass. For reference, that is heavier than warships. Plural. And Steve is just jogging around, jumping, swimming, sprinting, parkouring. At this point, we have 3 possible explanations. Steve is physically immortal. Gold in Minecraft is made of foam. Newton has been personally disrespected. And honestly, all 3 are still on the table. With Minecraft gravity measured at about 22.45 meters per second squared, we can estimate Steve's impact speed after an 80-block fall. Using the formula, velocity is equal to gravitational acceleration multiplied by time. That's about 216 kilometers per hour. So Steve is hitting the ground at highway speed, vertically. Momentum is equal to mass times velocity. Inputting our previously calculated mass and velocity, we get a momentum of 2.668 times 10 to the 9th power. That is 2.7 billion kilogram meters per second of momentum. For comparison, that is in the range of large asteroid-scale impacts. So Steve is not falling. Steve is a high-mass projectile entering the ground at lethal speed. Now we analyze what happens when that momentum stops. Impulse is defined by force multiplied by change in time, which we found earlier. So we solve for force. Force is equal to the change in momentum as he hits the ground, over the change in time, aka the time it takes for his velocity to reach 0. So, force is 2.7 billion kilogram meters per second over 0.1 seconds, getting us an approximate force of 2.67 times 10 to the 10th power. That is 26.7 billion newtons of force. At this point, Steve is not experiencing fall damage. He is experiencing impact forces associated with extinction-level events. And yet, he survives by eating steak. We can also calculate the kinetic energy at impact with 1/2 mass times velocity squared. Substituting and we get 80 billion joules of energy. This is roughly in the range of large meteor impacts, not something a biological organism survives. At this scale, Steve is effectively delivering impact energy comparable to a small asteroid strike every time he falls off a cliff. But the water bucket clutch appears to cancel all of this instantly. By increasing stopping time and distance, water dramatically reduces force by spreading out the momentum change. Even though Steve is carrying billions of joules of energy and asteroid-level momentum, a single block of water prevents lethal damage. Which, in physics terms, is not just unrealistic, it is structurally impossible without rewriting materials science itself. And yet in Minecraft, it works perfectly. So at this point, Steve is not just a heavy object. He is a system with asteroid-level kinetic energy, planetary-scale momentum, and survivability that ignores both. So either Minecraft is wrong, or Steve is the closest thing to a walking impact event the universe has ever allowed.